Parshas Ba'alaischa, as we head into the summer, we start getting to those parshiyos that are stories and incidents that we're a little bit less familiar with. They don't teach them at least not in preschool. I think we talk about this every year. Maybe that we should be discussing more, that people will make mistakes, because that's really what Chumash Bamidbar is about. It's about the mistakes. But there's an element in Parshas Ba'alaischa that I've been waiting for a while to mention, because it's based on a paragraph that I learned in Alei Shor when I was learning with my son about a year ago, that I found personally to be a tremendous chizuk for me, like very calming and grounding, and I wanted to share it with you. But we begin with the parsha. The parsha describes that in the second year, now let's just get our calendar straight, okay? They arrived at Har Sinai. They came out of Mitzrayim on the 15th day of Nisan, right? They crossed the Yam Suf 7 days later. The 50 days after, or 51 perhaps, days after they came out of Mitzrayim, they received the Torah. Vav or Zayin, Sivan, a little complicated, but around then, they received the Torah. So that's Sivan, right? The second month of the first year out of Mitzrayim. And then Moshe Rabbeinu went up to get the Luchais, and he came down on Shivasar B'Tammuz, so that's already in the summertime. He found the Egel, he broke the Luchais. He went up again to ask Hashem for Mechila. He came down Rosh Chodesh Elul. He came down the day before Rosh Chodesh Elul, actually. He went up again Rosh Chodesh Elul to get the second set of Luchais after he brought Shnei Luchais Avanim up to Shemayim with him, up the mountain with him, and he came down on Yom Kippur. Okay? The day after Yom Kippur, it's now already in Tishrei, right? They came out in Nisan, or half a year later. Okay? We're in Tishrei. It was Pesach time. Now it's after Yom Kippur. And by the time Sukkot came, they started building the Mishkan. They finished building the Mishkan Hanukkah time. They put it away in storage. And at the beginning of the second year, that first Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they inaugurated the Mishkan. Okay? So the Mishkan is inaugurated. It's now less than 2 weeks before the anniversary of them coming out of Mitzrayim. Right? Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And here the parshiyas get a little mixed up. Ein muktam u'me'ocher b'Torah. But then before the 15th day of Nisan, Hashem says it's time to make the Korban Pesach again, right? The second year. And then you have the whole story that there were people that were tamei, which I think we discussed a while ago, and it actually was Pesach Sheni. People that are tamei and can't bring the Korban Pesach, and they were told to bring it in Iyar. Okay, so now we're up to Iyar. Now, so that's Iyar, right? The 15th day of Iyar. Okay? Now, on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, no, mistake. Rosh Chodesh Iyar, 2 weeks before that, Rosh Chodesh Iyar of the second year that they came out of Mitzrayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says it's time to count Klal Yisrael. And that's where Parshas Bamidbar begins. Okay? Hashem says it's time to count Klal Yisrael. The entire minyan of Klal Yisrael, the counting of Klal Yisrael that takes place in the beginning of Chodesh Bamidbar takes place. And then an interesting thing happens. And later on in Parshas Bamidbar, Hashem says that there are going to be flags, there are going to be degalim, and the Shvatim are going to be situated around the Mishkan in a very specific pattern. Each Shevet, like the head Shevet and the two side Shvatim, on each direction around the Mishkan. That whole, right, that's the Seder of the Degalim. And then, and there, when the Torah is describing the Degalim, and describing that the camp will be set up this way when they are camped, but then when it's time to travel, they will travel. So then it talks about the numbers again. The Psukim and Parshas Bamidbar say the numbers again. And all the numbers again. Who was in every Shevet again. And the Ramban there asks in Parshas Bamidbar, why did you just said a few psukim ago, literally a few psukim before. It lists all the numbers of all the Shvatim, and then it says the Degalim and lists all the numbers of all the Shvatim again. So the Ramban says that it's to be merames to us that from the time that they did the count until the time that they traveled for the first time, the numbers stayed exactly the same. It was a miraculous, the numbers stayed exactly the same. Okay, meaning nobody died. How many days was it from the time they did the count till they traveled? So this week's parsha, it says that on the 20th day of Iyar, the Anan went up, and when the Anan went up, they knew that it was time to travel. So it was 20 days. It was a drop less than 3 weeks, and that there was this status quo and the numbers of Klal Yisrael, and then they started to travel. This Ramban has always bothered me, because it's an unbelievable nace that the numbers stayed the same. It's reminiscent. I always think when I read this Ramban, I always think of the parallel, a little bit of a parallel nace in a sense that happened in the days of Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, because Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch in Frankfurt was part of the broader Jewish community. And there was a big upheaval in German Jewry at that time. Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch had a shita that the Orthodox Jewish community should separate from the broader Jewish community at large, because he did not want to work in association with the conservative or reform or whatever it was at the time, and he separated out from the Jewish community. And at the time, that was a very, very, very serious decision. And there were Gedolei Olam that disagreed with him very strongly. And he separated out because of his shitas about this. It's much more complex than I'm saying it now, and than I even know. All of his reasons, and there were a lot of letters back and forth. But it wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to go make my own community. It wasn't just like that, like I'm going to separate out from the Jewish community and make my own community. It wasn't just that. It was much more than that. It was the Jewish community, it was a legal thing. It was like part of the government. It had official legal standing, the Jewish community. And it had a cemetery, and it had all these, this whole structure. And when Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch separated out his few mispalalim to make their own community, they lost that whole structure, including their Beis HaKvaros. They did not have a place to bury. And I don't know how long it was, but for the entire time, from the time he separated out until he secured a Beis Olam, nobody in his kehillah was nifter. That's what they say. So I don't know how, I don't know what the age is and how many people it was. I don't know, but it's just an interesting thing that they say.
It's buried in the new part of the main Jewish cemetery.
And that must be why. That must be why it's new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were there.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, he was one of the...
Adjacent to
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's
Interesting.
adjacent.
I have to look again at the books to get all the details of that, but I just remember that story. But in any event, when it comes to this Ramban, it doesn't seem to, like with Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, I could see a good reason for such a thing to happen. Because he b'mesiras nefesh, he separated himself out l'shem shamayim. There were people that argued with him, but it doesn't, but he was a big gadol, and he did it l'shem shamayim. He was one of the gedolei adar, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu stood with him to help him in his endeavor, and he started a Messiah that we have until today. But to say that Klal Yisrael was counted, and until they traveled, nothing changed. Who cares if nothing changed? Why is it significant? For 3 weeks, nobody died. So, the numbers stayed the same. And the truth is, there's a little bit of a technical issue here. When I say this over in certain, crowds, you have your accountants and your your number people that are saying, 1 second, if people turn 20 during that time, so then there's too many people. So then people had to die. So maybe it means, I don't remember the exact lashon of the Ramban, but the fact that the numbers stayed the same doesn't even necessarily mean that nobody died. Unless it was nobody had a birthday.
Those numbers were exact? Because they sound rounded when you read them.
It's true. That's a little bit of a conversation. We had a whole long conversation by Kiddush about this. Let's assume that they're exact. The reason they sound rounded is because the numbers of Klal Yisrael, Min HaShamayim, were very set numbers. But the general assumption is that they were exact. Because there's even, the count in Bar Midbar is more than 600,000. Right? 603,000 or whatever. But in any event, so it could be that the birthdays aren't counted that way. It could be that's the answer. It could be birthdays are just counted from the beginning of the year. There are different ways to count birthdays, and therefore it is significant that nobody died. Right? We count birthdays on our birthday, but it could be everyone got a year older in Nisan or something. So that way, that resolves that issue. But okay, again, I leave that for the numbers people. But the part that concerns me is, why do I need a nace like that? That's what concerns me. Just that Hashem does cool tricks, I think we've already established over the last 20 years, it's not acceptable to us, right? That's not meaningful to us. If Hashem makes a nace, if Hashem makes something happen that's significant, it has to have some significance. So, a few weeks ago, on Parshas Bamidbar, I was schmoozing with someone on a Friday afternoon, and while I was schmoozing with him, suddenly the answer hit me. Or at least an answer hit me. I thought like this, so this is where really we get started on our journey for tonight, that when Klal Yisrael was counted, it wasn't just stam a census. The counting of Klal Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to know who his soldiers were. Hashem was saying, be counted, be part of that group of servants of Hashem. Right? I think I've quoted here numerous times over the years the words of the Ramban, who describes how Moshe and Aaron were there by the counting, and they would gaze at each family and each person, and they would be mevarech them. It was a whole moment, this counting. It wasn't just like send an email, how many people are there. It was a whole a process. It was a spiritual thing. It was a ruchniistic thing, that by becoming part of the count of Klal Yisrael, you counted. You were part of the army of Hashem. You were enlisted in the most glorious mission of serving the Melech Malchei Amlachim, the Beirei Kol HaElamais, the whole Tachlis of the Bria. This was a major deal, signing up on this being counted. And this generation of the Dar Deya had a mission. They had a mission that they had to do. And their mission was that they had to go through a certain journey in the Midbar. They had to accomplish certain things. They had to travel, and they had to stop at various places. Listen to the Lashonos of the Psukim in our Parsha, where it talks about the traveling. Our Parsha talks a lot about the traveling of Klal Yisrael, which is why it's on my mind for this week's Parsha. And it talks about, because it says that this week's Parsha, it says that on the 20th day of the month of Iyar, the Anon went up and they started to travel. And it starts to describe that there was a cloud in the front by day, and there was a fire at night that led them. And then it starts to describe at length that it almost seems to be talking too much, if you don't know what you're reading. And it says, when the Anon went up, that's when the Klal Yisrael would travel. And when the Anon was Sheichen, when it went down, that's when Klal Yisrael knew to camp there. Al Pi Hashem Yisu, by the word of Hashem, they traveled. Ve'al Pi Hashem Yachanu, and by the word of Hashem, they camped. As long as the Anon was Sheichen, was resting on the Mishkan, they camped. And then it says, if the Anon was there for a long time, so then they stayed there, and they did not travel. Sometimes, this is all going on in the Pasuk, the Eish, and sometimes that sounds like it's like a travelogue. And sometimes, the Anon would be only a few days on the Mishkan. Al pi Hashem yachanu, again, repeated. Al pi Hashem yachanu, Al pi Hashem yiso. And sometimes, it says again, the Anon would be just like from night till morning, and then it would go, and then they would travel. Or 2 days, or a month, or a year. Based, and then again, repeat it again. You can't believe this. Repeat it again. Al pi Hashem yachanu, Al pi Hashem yiso. And listen to these words. Es mishmeres Hashem shamaru. The watch of Hashem, they kept. What is all this? Thank you for the delicious water.
You're very welcome.
So here's what hit me this Friday, a few Fridays ago. I was actually speaking to Rabbi Leibovitz when it hit me, actually. The counting is that you're ready for the mission. And the traveling, that's the mission. Because each place that Klal Yisrael went, they had a job to do. There were different nisyonos, different challenges in each place on their journey. Each challenge had its length of time that was set by Hashem, how long it had to be. And they had to be shomer that. That's as mishmeres Hashem shamaru. They had to be loyal to that. We're standing here. We're not... I want to travel. You can't travel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us here. There's Mishmeres Hashem Shamaru. We have a job to do here. I think our job is done. Apparently HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't agree because he's not traveling yet. So I'm still here. And so I have to be here. What? I just got here. I can't believe the Anan's leaving already. Okay, I guess it's time to go. I guess HaKadosh Baruch Hu felt that we accomplished what we needed to accomplish here. And now it's time to move on. Al pi Hashem yachanu. Al pi Hashem yiso. That was the mission. So, what I realized that Erev Shabbos was the reason the number stayed the same is that the counting was for the mission. And the way to show that this was the mission is that they were that count when the mission started. If the number changed, then it's not obvious that we're counting in order to do that mission of that journey. So when they counted, the Ramban says the number froze right there. Why? Because the idea is that this is the number of soldiers that will do the mission of Hashem, al pi Hashem yachanu, al pi Hashem yiso. Says the Ramban, a miracle happened, that the number stayed exactly the same for 20 days, because that's when the mission was. Now, why Hashem wanted it to be 20 days in between, I don't know. But the fact that the number stayed the same is to show that that's the mission. And of course, we understand that when the Torah tells this to us about the Dor Deya, the generation that was in the Midbar, we understand that it's not hard to read into it the story of our lives as well. And this is really what I wanted to speak about, to read this paragraph of Alei Shur that I thought was really, really important, because the idea, we've talked about so many times, the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a path and a journey for all of us. All of us have our challenges and difficulties. I've never said that in a room and someone came over to me after and said, I don't understand this share because my life was totally easy. It's never happened to me. And everyone has the assets that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given them, the people that love them, the people that support them, the people that are there for them, the wonderful people in their lives, their parnasa, their sustenance, their health. And some people have more health or less health. Some people have more parnasa or less parnasa. Some people have more healthy mishpacha or less healthy mishpacha, right? That all of that is stuff that's part of the variables that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, and Hashem sends us out, each one on our own mission. We may all be sitting around the same table, but boy, do we have different missions and different goals that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set us out all for. And I thought it was very, very significant, this idea, because I'll tell you why I'm saying it. Sometimes in life, there are situations that a person has to deal with, that a person davens hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of tefillos, asking Hashem to change that situation. And when that doesn't happen, so sometimes there's a certain sense of being abandoned by Hashem. Hashem's not listening. Why is Hashem saying no? What do I have to do to get Hashem to say yes? And a certain frustration with Hashem. And, we've talked about this in passing at different times, but I want to read to you this paragraph that Rav Wolbe writes. It's the introduction to the fourth shar of the first chelik of Alei Shur. And it's a insight that I think is life-altering. I really do. I think it's very, very important. He says as follows. He brings a Gemara. The Gemara says that there are three aspects of our lives that are not dependent on our zechuyos. Meaning it's not a punishment and it's not a schar. It just is what it is. Rather, it's talui, the Gemara says, b'mazel. And those three things are our lives, how long we live, Pashup Shara, how long we live, our children. I don't know if that means how well behaved our children are, I don't know. But something about our children, how many children, the health of our children, our hatzlacha with our children, something about our children. Umizayna is our parnasa. So it lists three things. Rav Wolbe says there are many other things also, but the Gemara lists three fundamental things. And the Gemara says these things are not about zechuyos. They're not about zechuyos. They're b'mazel talia. They depend on the mazel. Now, I do want to say that it's clear that he doesn't mean that they can't be affected by zechuyos. Sometimes they can, but sometimes they can't. What is this mazel? What's this mazel? Just b'mazel? Like luck? Like luck of the draw? Flip a card? Roll the dice? What does it mean it's b'mazel? So here's where Rav Wolbe clarified a parsha of life and something meaningful about life for me, and I hope that'll do the same for you. Rav Wolbe writes as follows. Mazel hu amitas atzmai shel ha'adam mitzad shirish nishmasai. Mazel doesn't mean luck. Mazel means the part of the hanhaga of Hashem that you don't have a choice about. The things in life, and Rav Wolbe says an amazing thing. He says when you came into this world with koiches in order to bring out certain koiches that you have. That's what you're here for. You're here to develop and to bring out your koiches, your midos, your abilities to serve Hashem. Right? To take that capacity for serving Hashem and to actualize it. How does that happen? It doesn't happen by staring at the walls. It doesn't happen by life being easy. It doesn't happen by just wrapping oneself in the comforts of life and not ever having to face adversity. He says it dafka happens. What brings out who we are is when we face things and when we deal with things and when we grapple with things. It doesn't only mean the bad things, of course. Baruch Hashem, we've had the schus sometimes to grapple with wonderful things. But it's the effort, it's the kayach that we have to put into things. That's what brings out our kaychas. That's what develops us. That's what makes us who we are. So he says, don't look at life as like, if only I could have just sat in the corner and things would have been easy. That would have been my first choice. But unfortunately, all these things are happening, so now I have to deal with all these things. He's like, these things are the key to the entire existence and the entire reason that you're here. That's what he means. Amitas atzmai shel ha'adam mitzad shirish nishmasai. So he says that sometimes there are things in life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us because we're zeicha to them. We could daven for them and we could get wonderful things. We could have zechuyos and get wonderful things. We could have zechus avos and get wonderful things. That's true. And sometimes the HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends an einish also. And bad things could happen, right? We don't believe in schar v'einish. We're not erlich hayidin. Sometimes things could be a punishment. But there are many things in our lives, foundational things in our lives, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose a journey for us because He knew our neshama, and He knew that this was the path that we needed to be on to do and to accomplish what we came here to accomplish. And when I read this, I felt a weight lifted from me, because it told me that not every tefillah that Hashem didn't answer is Him not answering. I'll daven for everything because I don't know which things are movable things and which things aren't. So I'm going to daven for everything. And maybe I could throw some zechuyos in and maybe things could change. But the things that seem to be immovable, and I'm going to keep davening. It doesn't mean Hashem didn't listen. Sometimes Hashem is saying, I know that you're davening. I hear your tefillos, but you need this. You don't realize it, but you need this. This is part of the etzem mission that you have in this world. This is why you're here. And when that happens, there's a certain serenity, I think, that comes from the understanding that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. We're part of something, we're part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mission. We're part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. And we're playing our role in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. And Reb Volba says that that's what it means when it says, Chaye bani umizayna lav b'schusa talia milsa. It's not about zechuyos. It's about b'mazla. It's about, this is how Hashem understands the necessity to bring out from my shayrish haneshama, to bring out from me who I am. I was thinking about that in the context of the Psukkah b'Parshas Ba'aloischa, that like, sometimes we're there for a day, sometimes we're there for a month, sometimes we're there for a year. As you know, there was one place that they were in the Midbar for 19 years. Never knowing if tomorrow they were leaving. Can you imagine? For 19 years, never knowing if tomorrow they were leaving. Every day, just saying, okay, we're going to keep at it today until it's time, until we've done our mission here. 19 years later, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, you guys are done. Now it's time to move on. And there's a certain, of course, we always daven, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu values and loves and cherishes and wants every single tefillah that we send to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if it's not used for the thing we're davening for, it goes for other amazing things and brings Mashiach closer. But sometimes when HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts us in a certain place in life, we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu crafted this situation because this is my role in this world. This is the small area of the universe that's my job is to bring light into. And I think it's a very, very, very important thing to realize, because if we don't live that way, we end up living our lives sometimes with the most profound regrets or wishes that life could have turned out all different. And to go through life with a sense of like, all right, I guess it's okay. That's not how HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to live our life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to live our life knowing that the life that we're living, that's it. That's our shleimus. That's where Hashem wants us. That's what Hashem wants from us. That's where our entire role in this universe comes from. We're not here by mistake. And the difficult things that we go through, or the challenges, or the twists and turns that our lives have taken, like we live in a world, in the world of fiction. We live in the world, those of you that are fiction readers, we live in a world where people, there's like alternate histories and alternate, choose your own adventure. Right? You ever see the choose your own adventure books when you were kids? You know what I'm talking about? What?
I wasn't such a reader.
So you would have a book, and at the bottom of the page it would say, so let's say, so did she stay home or did she go to camp? If she stayed home, see page 50. If she went to camp, see page 70. So you would choose your own adventure. You go around the book that way. Okay? So what did you do when you finished your adventure? You went back and you see what would have happened if you did the other thing. Right? And we sometimes think that our lives are like that also. That like, I made a certain choice and it turned out this way. What would happen if I would just roll back the clock and I would just choose the other thing. And we don't realize, this is very important, there is no other thing. This is where Hashem wanted us. There is no other reality. There is no crossroads where we chose A and there was a choice of B. If we're here today, then this is where we needed to be. And this is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent us. And this is the mission that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. And I think there's a menucha in that. Al pi Hashem yachanu. Ve'al pi Hashem yiso. We travel, just like in the Midbar, the Anan went up and they traveled. We have our Ananim. The winds, the different things in life that blow us in one direction or another direction, that make us make, various decisions. I mean, think about this, okay? I hope that I don't think anybody here will be upset, but I hope nobody listening to this is insulted from when I say this. But isn't it true that the most profound decisions that you make for your entire life, you make when you're very young? No? Is that interesting? I've had people tell me, even like when they have children and they're in their 20s, they're like, what is Hashem thinking? I'm 25. I can't raise a child. What do I know? And I always mechazik them, that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you a child, that means that you have the wisdom to raise that child. Or do they? But the decisions, though, Mrs. Gottesman, I'm not going to ask you how old you were, but when you decided to move to Waterbury, think about that. Think of it, it was like at least 5 years ago. Right? It was a different lifetime. Maybe you would think about it differently now. Maybe you would do something different. This for sure, whatever might come in the future, this for sure identified your entire life, right? This decision that you made when you were a little bit younger than you are today. True? It's amazing. We live our whole lives with the ramifications of decisions that we made, when we could look back and be like, we didn't have any seichel at all. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. We didn't have any, I'm thinking about the decision that I made to move to Waterbury. I was just like, okay, let's go. That's it. Boom, 26 years. I was a little kid. I was actually 26. I was a little kid. I made a decision, affected my children and my grandchildren. It's crazy. No? It's crazy. The answer is, it's not crazy. Because I was al pi Hashem yachanu. The al pi Hashem yiso. That young, whatever description you want to give, that younger man that tried his best to make the right decision, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was guiding him. And I wound up here. And I could feel confident that this is where I belong. At least for today. And I'm planning on staying. But al pi Hashem yachanu, al pi Hashem yiso. Right? That's, and it's true with every decision. It's true with who we marry. It's true with what business we go into. How many people decide to invest in a certain career? They're like, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? I had $1 for every time someone said that to me. I went into this. I can't even understand what I was thinking. Al pi Hashem yachanu, al pi Hashem yiso. HaKadosh Baruch Hu leads us, and it's true that we have to take responsibility for our choices, and it's true that we have bechira to choose between right and wrong, and it's true that hakol bidei shamayim chutz miyiras shamayim. That's all true, but there are elements of our life. And sometimes they could be very fundamental, foundational elements of our life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose for us, because this was the life HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to live. And as we live that life, we give Hashem nachas. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu was like, that's exactly right. That's exactly where I want you and what I want you doing. And that's what gives HaKadosh Baruch Hu nachas. And to me, it gives me a certain menucha, to be able to be mekabel, to a certain acceptance. There are people who spend their whole lives, and as they get older, it gets even worse, just checking back that old page. What if I would have chosen something else? You remember that, right? What if I would have chosen something else? What if I would have gone a different choice? You know? How life could have been different. You know? I made a decision 28 years ago to move back from Eretz Yisrael. And I had this haunted me for a while. Like, we were really touching it out, you know that? We would have never known each other. It was really like back at, so these two kids, I hope my wife is not insulted if I say we were both two little kids. These two kids made a decision that made a difference to our entire future. And we just decided to move back to America. I was 24. I don't know. And the sense that no, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is guiding us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us to the place in life that we need to be, for the amount of time that we need to be in that place. And we do the job that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. And how do we know what that job is? We have a Torah, and it tells us what to do. And we know that we're here to try to build our mishpachos in as healthy a way as possible. And we make the best decisions that we can. And as I've said tens of thousands of times in this shiur, Loi nitna Torah la malachei ashares. The Torah wasn't given to malachim, it was given to human beings. And we take the mission that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, and we accept that mission. I'm mekabel. This is the challenge that you've given me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I accept the challenge. This is the place that you put me. I accept it. Of course, when I daven, I could daven my heart out and talk about what I want. But when I finish davening, then I say, okay, davening is over. Now in my life, b'simcha, I'm excited to be doing exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do. And I'm excited to be exactly where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to be. And it's a very, very, very important thing to know. It's a very important thing. It was just such a menucha for me to see that. And I think it's something else also that, like, and this is maybe a little bit of a smaller thing to focus on in terms of Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, Al Pi Hashem Yiso. I've noticed an interesting trend about people. And that is like this. When we have a decision to make, so we make a decision, and then many people spend their time after that decision thinking about what would have happened if they would have made the other decision. Right? You recognize that, right? We do that sometimes. And the reason that we do that is because, like, let's say you're deciding if you should stay in Waterbury for the summer or if you should go away for the summer. Okay, let's say such a decision. Right? Should you go to the country or whatever, or should you stay here? Right? Many families, okay, by now, I think most people made their decisions, but many families made that decision, right? Deciding where to be. So, if you stay here, so there's certain milas, I'm home, or whatever the milas are here. If I go away, there's other milas. If I stay here, there's certain chesroinus. If I go away, there's other chesroinus. Now here's the part that's important, is that wherever we go, whatever we do, the uncomfortable thing about that thing is what jumps out at us. So if there was a mila to being in Waterbury because I'm home, and then I go away and there's other milas, but over there I'm not at home, so then I'm going to go away and what's going to jump out at me is that I don't feel at home. Right? The discomfort of wherever we are is what jumps out at us. But I've noticed something very interesting. That's only when we're talking to ourselves or our close family. But when we go to shul and we're shvuzing with our friends, then we talk about how amazing our decision was. Okay, maybe not always, but very often. Then everyone's saying, no, the reason I'm doing this is because this is my life. And then, like, when we're trying to convince our friends, you know, because there's a certain, like, a tendency to try to say, like, I'm great, you know? I'm doing great, you know, I have this, I have that, we're doing this, we're doing that, whatever it is. Then we focus on the positive. And I was just thinking to myself that how beneficial it would be for us if we would give ourselves that speech. You know, like sometimes we save it for other people, and then we sit with our discomfort. But whatever the decision might be, in whatever areas that we make a decision, which sometimes we just do the best we can. You have to choose something, right? And you make the best you can. Schools, jobs, vacations. You do the best you can. You make the best decision you can. And ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in control. We've talked about this there. Unless it's like a Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov decision, Hashem's in charge of our decisions as well. So, once that decision is made, like it says in the Gemara that when someone buys something, do you ever hear this? That when someone buys something, you're supposed to be Yishabchena Be'einav. When someone buys something, you're supposed to praise that thing. So if someone shows up and says, you like my new car, you don't be like, actually, not really. I cannot believe you bought this car. This was a big mistake. Which I've had things like that in my life, Like, this was it? Like that. Someone buys something, you tell them that it was a good buy. You mishabeach it. Oh, it's so nice. I see it has this feature, it has that feature. Right? So why don't we do that with our decisions and our lives? Well, I mean,
we're in control.
What?
It's like we're in control.
That is exactly the point. Right? That's the connection between the first part of this share and the second. But if I can recognize that ultimately, this is where Hashem put me. I'll give you a mashal. I hope it's not too close to home, but imagine a husband and wife are sitting at home, and the husband says, let's go on vacation. And the wife's like, nah, I'd rather stay home. Okay? Which is usually the way it goes. Sometimes it's the opposite, but usually that's the way it goes. I'd rather stay home. I was like, no, we really need a vacation. I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for you. Of course. But I really, we need a vacation. We should go to a hotel for the night. And the wife's like, really? What's the point just to pack up and go sleep in a hotel? We're here. Let's just... we're on vacation right here. Why are we going away? And the husband's like, no, we'll go out. It'll be fun. We'll go out to eat. So on. It's fun to be away. We'll be away from everything. And the wife's like, are you bringing your phone with you? Yeah. So then we're not away from everything, right? And that's the conversation, right? So finally, Nashim Tzidkaniyos, the wife says, fine, we'll go on vacation. And the husband's like, just remember, I'm just doing this for you. Okay? So the husband and wife go on vacation. And they show up at a hotel. And it's a decent hotel. Both people walk into the room. The husband walks in. He's like, oh, nice fireplace. The wife walks in. She's like, oh, it's drafty in here. The husband walks in, and he's like, wow, I didn't realize that it comes with a fridge. The wife sits down on the bed, is like, wow, it's like a board, the bed. You can't sleep on this thing. What's going on? Okay, why is that happening?
They have a predetermined...
Because she's not happy about being there. And if she's not happy about being there, everything negative about being there is going to jump out at her. And he's super excited to be there. And to prove to her that it was the right decision. So everything that's positive about the place will jump out at him. If she's the one that said, let's go on vacation, and he said no, you could be sure that the exact opposite conversation would be going on. Right? Does everyone agree with me that that's the fact? Don't you realize that if we could look at our lives and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who loves us more than we could possibly understand love, chose this life for us, chose this moment for us, chose this makom for us, chose these people for us. It's not just a matter of, I'll accept it. Do you see what I mean? That in every person in our life, there are wonderful things to see, and there are possibly a couple of not wonderful things to see. Yes? Okay? In every person in our life. In every home that any of us live in, there are nice parts of the home, and there are parts of the home that we're like, not sure why I picked this house. Okay? In every relationship, in every job, right? That's true. Okay? Even in very challenging things. Even in people have struggle with their children, and it's such a hard struggle, but I'll talk to a mother or a father who's struggling with their child, and they'll be like, but Lamaisi's the cutest kid in the world. Things like that, because, Lamaisi, we love our kids. Lamaisi, they're yummy. And, okay, and now we gotta figure it out, but there's so much good there. It's not, I hope I'm getting my point across. By understanding Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, Val Pi Hashem Yiso, it's not just about, this is what Hashem wanted for me. It's about starting to see the good, like that husband walking into the hotel room. Like, this is where Hashem put me. This place is amazing. These people are wonderful. I love these people. This is where I want to be. This is what just to be able to, because if I believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves me, and if I believe that I'm where I'm supposed to be, Yishab Chena Be'enav. So then, let me see the good. Let me focus on what's good about it. And by doing that, by training myself that way, I will see more good. I will actually see more good. Actually.
But can I ask a question? So I understand that with things that like we can't choose, the weather, or like things that have nothing to do with our decision. It's all from Hashem. We have to make the best out of it. But when we had to make a decision, how do we train ourselves to think that we didn't really make a decision?
But that's part of the emunah here, is that when we make a decision, we do the very best we can. We know we had to pick something. And then part of our emunah is that once I made a decision, now again I'm in Hashem's hands. But there's no such a thing. It can't be that right now you would face Hashem, and Hashem would be like, no, this life is not working out. You made a few choices over the life that's not what I wanted. You were really supposed to be in Tzfas. And what are you doing here? Oh, you're married to a lawyer? He was supposed to be married to an orthodontist. You made a mistake. You know? You're living in Waterbury? You're supposed to be living in Tzfas. Whatever it is. So you're from Ashkenaz, davening, Litvish family? You were supposed to be Hasidish. It can't be. It can't be that right now you're living your life. What?
That's not a decision you made. That's what you were put into.
No, but a lot of them are decisions. You decided where to live, and you decided who to marry. Right? So it must be that we make decisions. I'm not getting into the decisions of Taiv and Ra, which, you know, the truth is it's true about those also, and I've spoken about that. I don't want to get there at this time of the shir, okay, because it's getting late and I would like to daven Ma'ariv. Okay? But the point that I'm making is that, but most of the things that we agree are not good and bad, right? I'm deciding where to send my child to school. It's not a question of my Yetzer Hara saying this and my Yetzer Tov is saying this. I'm just trying to make the right decision. Once I make a decision, even if it becomes clear that the other decision would have been better, I could find such solace and chizuk knowing, apparently this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. Because I did my best to make the right decision. And it wasn't a Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov decision. I just tried to make the right decision.
So there's no mistakes.
There's no mistakes. Yes, that's exactly right.
Also, you might have to like change schools, let's say. But
Yes.
That's part of it.
Exactly. Then that part, that journey, that's the Al Pi Hashem Yachanu and the Al Pi Hashem Yiso. That's part of it. So if I put my kid in a school and then I realize halfway through the year, like, oh boy, this is not the right place for them. Next year they have to be in a different school. We call it a mistake. Because in our cheshbonos, it's a mistake. But we won't say, if you put your daughter in a school and you decide in the end it's not the right place for her. You think it was a mistake by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Every girl that she met, every relationship that she had, every relationship that she missed in the other place, all that is just a disaster because of your mistake. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu engineered that. Sometimes we make decisions, we look back, we don't understand what we were thinking. We were blind. We don't understand. We thought it all made sense, and we just didn't realize. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu pulls us to where He wants us to be. Our hands are being held. We're being pulled to where we need to be, to where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be. That's why we don't look back. We just look at today. And we serve Hashem here as best as possible. And what a nice place this is. And we see the beauty. And we look around at the people in our lives. You know, we live in a small kehillah. It's even super important. But for our families even, and for our friends, to look around and to be able to have a certain sense of like, it's amazing, like, this type of like ethos where you, some of you know this better than others, but like in a family, everyone could be fighting with each other. But if someone says something bad about the family, everyone hates them, right? Don't start off with my family, Right? You could have that kind of thing. It's not in every family, but but you understand that kind of thing, right? If you think about it, something's missing there. Because there's a certain sense of like, yeah, our family. But how come you don't have that sense when you talk to your family? In other words, there's a makom to see the beauty in the people in my life. And sometimes we do that. We look around the community. This has this chisaron, this shul has this chisaron, this person has that chisaron, this family has that chisaron. By the time we're done, there's just like no place for us. We just feel like, we could shoot holes in everything. But if we believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me here, welcome to this hotel room. Oh, look how beautiful this person is. Look how beautiful this person is. Look how wonderful this mishpacha is. Look how impactful this ma'aseh is. Look how caring this organization is. We could start seeing the good. It's the same community. And it's not that I'm convincing you of something. It's just seeing differently. Coming with different eyes and seeing differently. I always say this morbid thought, but it continues to be true, so I keep saying it. It's a crazy, insane thing that when people die, we think better of them. It's crazy. It's true, right? You don't agree?
Most of the time.
You know what I mean, though, right?
Acharei mos kedosh
What? Acharei mos kedosh shememar, right? Like, something like, yeah, he was a nice guy. One second, when he was alive, you didn't say he was a nice guy. You said he was the most annoying guy ever. Okay, and there's reasons for that. But part of this al pi Hashem yachanu, al pi Hashem yiso, part of recognizing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us here with our challenges, with our nisyonos, with our family members, with our journey, with the incidents that we've had to grapple with and even maybe struggle with our parnasa, with our health. This is where Hashem put us. First of all, there's a certain menucha. I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm doing exactly what I need to do in this world. Now let me just do this right. It gives energy. Can you feel that? Like, it gives a certain energy. Like, there's no b'di'evet, there's no if only. Right now, right here, we're all going to go home in a few minutes. Let's go home and let's do what's right. Because we were put here for this moment. We're here. We're supposed to be here. This is where we belong. This is where our job is. This is what brings out who we are. Let's do it. There's a certain power to that. Instead of, I didn't really belong here, I shouldn't have really done that, I shouldn't have married this person, I shouldn't have moved here, I shouldn't have made that decision, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, anyway, I guess, whatever. I was telling someone else, it's not like plan B, it's like we're up to plan like T. No, it doesn't work that way. This is plan A. And when I go home tonight, I'm in plan A. This is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me. Now, what am I doing with this day? That's A. And B, which I think is equally important. When I go home tonight, let me see and here also, by the way, but let me see the beauty of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to me. Whether it's the people in my life, the makom that I'm in, the midas that I have, all the different parts of my life. Let me appreciate the good things that I have. Some of you are going to get phone calls tonight. Before you say hello, okay, try this. Before you say hello, just think to yourself, I'm so lucky that this person is calling me. You'll think of something nice about the person. It'll be a different phone call, you'll see. Just to be able to, am I just being fluffy, like, oh, let's be all positive? No. I'm saying if HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me here because He loves me, of course I should see the beauty in where I am, right? It makes sense. That's what I should do. There's also not beauty. Okay, those are the challenges. That's what's going to make me thrive. That's what's going to make me me. So this is the parsha. This is the parsha of Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, of Al Pi Hashem Yiso. And this is the parsha to bolster our emuna that each stage of our life and each step and each challenge is a matana from Hashem. And while we're alive in this world, we won't ever fully understand the meaning of each step, but we still follow the cloud, right? You follow the cloud. Cloud 9. Yashikaya.
Thank you.